Welcome on inside the Business of Social podcast powered by STN Digital. Every single show, we talk to the experts to keep you up to date on the ever-changing marketing and social landscape. This is episode 37. Who is 37? When I first saw it, I was like, Meta World Peace is a famous 37. Who else we got here? Lester Hayes. Why does that make me laugh? Lester? Bill Spaceman Lee. Doak Walker. Am I saying that correctly? As you guys can tell, every show I have my guys pull famous 37s, and some of these guys are just so out there. Derek Fisher, he didn't wear 37. Was that like in Golden State or Utah? He was famously 2. He actually, I think he wore a weird number 2 before that. Oklahoma City 37 when he was backcourt with Russell Westbrook. Okay, I believe you. I always go NBA here, but I'm going to do it again. The Meta World Peace podcast. We are going to be joined by the Chief Marketing Officer, the CMO at the Big East Conference, Ann Crandall, who spent some time under David Stern, actually worked really closely with him at the NBA for about 5 years, spent some time at Roadrunner Racing as well, and just has been a very successful marketer in our space for quite some time. So I want to dig a little deeper. Sometimes we get into, NFL team social. Sometimes we get into, television and cable stuff. And this is going to be really good for any marketers out there. She's responsible for all the March MSG campaign. We've actually, here at STN, have had the pleasure to work with her the last, I think, 4 years now, and see her often when we're out in New York and everything like that. But her and I really haven't had a chance to talk shop and really get into the granularness of marketing and what she's seen as successful. So I think you guys are really going to enjoy this. Once again, the CMO at Big East Conference, Ann Crandall. All right, she is the Chief Marketing Officer at the Big East Conference. Ann Crandall joins us on the program. Ann, thanks so much for the time.
Thank you, David. I really appreciate it.
Of course. All right, I always kick it off with a random question. And I know you spent some time, 5 years at the NBA under David Stern. Can you give me your favorite David Stern story?
Let's see. What can I repeat? Yeah. Well, it was actually, I was hired from DirecTV to run the direct broadcast satellite business for the NBA. Most people know it now as NBA League Pass. Yep. And really, it was very much in the beginning. So this was probably January of 1996. And I came up with a marketing plan to get new subscribers. So I had proposed the very typical thing that a lot of TV networks do or cable stations do, and do a free preview, get everybody to kind of taste what the content is. Yep. And then as soon as it's over, hit them up with what the fee is going to be. So I proposed this to David, and he said to me, "Why in the world would you give away my product for free?" And, he said it in a, kind of affirmative, tone. And I said, I totally understand what you're saying. I said, but we only have like the early adopters as our customers right now. Mm-hmm. We need to let other people experience what it is. They might not even realize there is a need for out of market and NBA games. So we had a much deeper discussion. Then he says, "Okay, you've got some guts to talk back to me. So give it a try, but don't spend a lot of money promoting it."
Well, i.e. why HBO and Showtime since forever have given you 3 months free trial, and then you automatically kind of get grandfathered in. And it's funny that those conversations were happening back, and you said 96,
96, January of 96.
Because Adam Silver just came out within the last year, and I think it was pretty famously said, we want to give our fans snacks and hope that they end up, eating a full meal, which is just awesome how that continues to kind of be the case for the NBA. Can you give the listeners a quick 60-second elevator pitch on, I know this is going to be tough, but all that you do at the Big East as CMO?
Well, that's great, because I think the CMO, title is kind of a confusing title. So the easiest way is I'm responsible for all the commercial aspects of the conference. So it's everything, including sales, marketing, social and digital, both content and distribution. It's also ticket sales, which is a significant revenue stream for us. So that means working with MSG, to sell tickets, sell out the arena. I also manage the business side of the relationships with Madison Square Garden, but also with Fox. So I work with Fox Digital. I work with Fox Marketing. I work a little bit with Fox Production. So it's really everything from revenue streams to content, and then how do your customers, and your customers in our cases are a couple areas really, fans, but also the media. And then thirdly, and most importantly, are our schools. How do we service our schools to help them on campus, whether it's marketing, how do we promote the conference? How can they use the conference? And lastly, merchandise and licensing, which takes up a significant amount of my time because how are licensees using the Big East Conference logo? Do we like the way that design looks on a shirt or a hat? And then, working with all of the licensees. So I would say all the commercial aspects of the conference, not scheduling, not administration. I don't manage the officials. I don't work very closely with the NCAA. So hopefully that answers your question.
No, yeah, I think you and I were talking about it. And I think, when you hear the term CMO, I think often people kind of put you in a box of what that means. And at some companies, you may have a VP of ticket sales, a CRO, a CFO, exactly, and all these different executive positions. But in your role specifically, just working with you over the last few years, like you're touching a lot of different areas as a CMO. You can't really fit it in a box.
Exactly. Well, and I think my situation is unique, which is why this has been one of the best jobs of my career. Because of my previous experience, like I said, at DirecTV, the NBA, I worked at New York Roadrunners for 12 years. I had varied experience, which is really almost the A to Z of the commercial business. And so Val Ackerman, who's the commissioner of the Big East Conference, and I worked together at the NBA, like I said, from 96 to the end of 2000. So when the league reconfigured in July of 2013, Val really needed somebody to handle a large portion of running of a conference.
Well, you also, in the NBA, not to get off topic, but you dealt with the Jordan years, him retiring, the NBA lockout in 99. Like those 5 years couldn't have been more polarizing, I think, at the league.
Yeah. And for me, I think it's when the Knicks were great. So I've been a diehard Knicks fan. So, but I think, that was when the NBA really was on the beginning of a huge trajectory that they obviously continue.
That's awesome. So I like to get in the Big East specifically in a little bit, but I want to get more general in the marketing area. How do you approach marketing? What's your core belief on how to approach it, regardless of the brand?
So I think whether you're talking about partnerships or just, the brand that you're working on, the first thing is, what is your brand, identity? What do your core customers think of your brand? Do they like it? Do they know what it is? If they do like it, what do they like? What don't they like? Are they confused by it? And then, it's advertising marketing 101. How do you differentiate yourself from your competitor or someone that a consumer thinks is similar to your brand? So actually, it's very applicable to the Big East because everybody had what they thought the Big East was, a 16-team league. It was Georgetown, Syracuse, it was ESPN, and all of that. So now that we went from a 16-team league to a 10-team league, we were no longer with ESPN. We were with Fox because they wanted to start FS1 and FS2. So my first thing I did was conduct a brand audit because I really had no idea what everybody thought of us. And I didn't want everybody to call us the new Big East because I just thought that would be even more confusing. So I think you have to understand how you're perceived in the marketplace. Once you know that, really key in on how you're differentiated from others, and then really focus on that. And I would say my number one recommendation to everybody that I talk to is keep it simple. So as you well know, our campaign has been March to MSG for 4 years. And someone said to me, "Are you going to change it?" And I said, "No, our biggest differentiator is our tournament at Madison Square Garden every March. And I want the fan to follow us all season, not just at the tournament. So if they can follow us throughout the regular season up to the tournament, that's where the March comes in. And obviously it's a play on words because the tournament is in March. And it's just obviously very simple. And then a benefit of it is MSG is one of our key partners. They benefit from it. They They like the fact that they are included in everything that we do. So,
I mean, their name is in the tagline. That's pretty nice.
Right. And we're not doing it just because of that, but it totally makes sense. And so that's what I, focus on. What is the perception of your brand? How do you differentiate yourself? And then how do you continue to make sure that you're doing that with every campaign, every communication?
That's actually really interesting because, I mean, you look at Nike, Just Do It, BMW, the ultimate driving machine. They're not changing their tagline every year. And I think I didn't really think about that until you just said it, but there's a lot of brands that literally change their tagline every season, every year, every campaign. And Nike has the main campaign and then the sub campaigns underneath it. But to have one that stays true is, I think, so important.
Well, I think people get very caught up, and I understand it. If you're in the marketing field, you've worked with agencies, you may have been a creative director at one point.
Yeah.
You feel that you are always going to be evaluated on, is it new? Is it creative? And my answer to that is, if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how creative you are. And I think if you have something that's working, that's being creative.
And I think also too, like you're in the brand every day, you're eating, you're living, you're breathing it. And I think oftentimes in our industry, you'll probably agree, like, let's change it up. Like, we're sick of it. Like, you're sick of it because you look at it every day. But for the consumer in New York, they're only seeing it, for a month or so a year. So they get it, they resonate with it, and they don't have to be sick of it.
Exactly. And I'm a big fan of alliterations. I think the M, March to MSG, makes it very easy. It's also transferable to a hashtag. It just made a lot of sense, and we came up with it in-house in a conference room.
Well, that being said, I would love to get your thought, because I think often professionals mix this up. Can you explain the difference for me between marketing and sales? Because I do a lot of marketing campaigns where people ask me, why is there not a CTA? And why are we not hitting them over the head with check out now? Like, well, that's not marketing, that's sales. But we'd love to hear how you would explain the difference between the two.
Well, I'm so happy that you asked that question, because that is a question, or even if it's not a question that someone says out loud, they think it. So to me, marketing is on the top of a pyramid. Sales is a tactic of marketing. So marketing is, how are you convincing someone to take an action? An action can be a sale. An action can be to follow you on social media. An action could be to talk to a friend about it, go into a store. So to me, sales is a function of marketing, but it's not the be all and end all. So I started my career in direct marketing. So I've always been, I always lean toward the ability to analyze, what your effort, performed at. So I'm a proponent of direct marketing. So CTAs and some type of call to action is important. But sales is, in my mind, a tactic of marketing.
And just in your experience with the NBA, Big East, I think also marketing takes some time. I think a lot of companies, they start their marketing, they wonder why their sales aren't, 4x after a month of their marketing campaign. It's a long lead in terms of upper funnel marketing as well. What have you seen in your experience when you launched that general awareness campaign at the top? When do you kind of pull the trigger on? And let's use Big East Conference as an example. The first message you're sending out to fans is probably not buy tickets right this second, or maybe it is. But what is your thought on kind of the upper funnel part of any campaign?
So I think you have to talk to fans when they're interested in hearing from you. So what I mean by that is, first of all, don't expect them to come to you. Number one, that you have to go to them. So our season starts, the beginning of November. And even though everybody told me when I started, why are you promoting the tournament in November? Why not promote it in November? That's when the season starts. All of our games are on national television.
Yeah.
So I'm going to start hitting them over the head as soon as possible, because I really do think more than ever, especially in New York, you have to constantly hit them over the head because they're bombarded with everything.
Yeah.
So I think it's talk to them when they're ready to talk to you. Secondly, I think you have to try every single tactic you can possibly do. So we do everything from out-of-home media to social media advertising to events to sponsorships. I try to get our sponsors to promote our tournament as well. And I try to think of, how can I get more people to buy tickets in any possible way I can? And that's why I think we've been successful, because everybody thinks everyone used to think the average customer for the men's basketball tournament is 51 years old. Well, guess what? Facebook is not.
Yeah.
Facebook a year ago was one of the best ways for us to reach women, ages, 25 to 34, and no one would have ever thought of it. But that's who the target is on Facebook. It's not necessarily the person who's on Twitter. It's not necessarily the person who's going to go into the garden and buy a ticket to a concert. So for me, try everything, but then analyze everything.
Right.
I think not analyzing results or not having a person on your staff to do that is where a lot of, marketing efforts fall down.
So in your career thus far, can you think of an example of maybe an A/B test that you tried with a certain medium or a certain partner that surprised you? Maybe like you mentioned the Facebook thing to females, which I think is a surprising tactic, but anything else come to mind that you've tried in your past?
Like we just, for the men's basketball tournament, we tried Instagram. And I thought we should try it. And we tried Snapchat 2 years ago, and Snapchat didn't work at all. Instagram really worked, but it worked when we talked about buying a book of tickets. A book of ticket means you're going to go to every single session, where I wouldn't think that would work, because I think I have the preconceived notion that social media is more instantaneous.
Right.
I see something, I saw an ad on the marquee, and so tomorrow I'll buy the ticket for tomorrow night. So it was really, I thought that was very, very interesting, which, confirmed what I just said to you. Try everything, analyze everything, and it's not always what you think the fan is going to be, because the fan usually has friends or they have a partner who influences, what they decide to purchase.
If you're starting from scratch and you're a brand new company or you're launching a new brand, from a marketing standpoint, where do you start?
Good question. So what is the brand? What does the brand stand for? What do you want it to stand for? I think that is really, I just heard a great podcast the other day, and the company said, everybody thinks we're this company, but we're really a customer service company. So they happen to sell a product that everybody wants, but they want to be known as having the best customer service in all of retail. So all of their efforts focus on that, how they hire people, the questions that they ask in the interview, and the type of experience they give the customer is all based on that. And oh, by the way, they just happen to sell XYZ. So I think, what do you want to be known for? And then, is that doable? I mean, you could want to be the best customer service company ever, but do you really have the right components in place to do that? So I would start there, and then, all right, if you want to be the best customer service company, how are you going to express it?
Yeah, tell that story.
Exactly. And then I think, lastly, how are you going to measure success? And I think that's a question, those 3 or 4, answers I just gave you, you can really apply that to everything. If you're in sales and you're going to, meet a customer, what does your brand stand for? What story do you want to tell? What do we have at our company that we could help you? And then how are we collectively going to analyze it? How are you going to deem it successful? How will I deem it successful? I really think that can apply to almost anything.
A common word I think some people use in our industry is like a soft touch, right? Like, how do you find a way to stay in front of your core demo without it feeling like spam or being too salesy? How have you found ways to stay in front of your consumer without being overbearing, if that makes sense?
No, that's right. Well, it's a great question for us because, after the NCAA tournament, everybody, you think, forgets college basketball. But there's a lot of things that happen after the big tournament. First of all, some of the players graduate. So we make sure that we have video of our, student athletes who are graduating that year, and we put that in front of our fans all the time. Anytime one of our schools is in the news or has done something that we think our fans would like, we make sure that content is out there and we constantly update it. If a reporter is talking about the Big East, we make sure we cover that. But we also, like I just said before, what do we want to be known for? We want to be relevant to everybody. So if we have funny moments, so we have the Big East Digital Network, and we launched a weekly men's basketball show 2 years ago, actually this August. And we have a host who is from one of our schools. He's a very unique personality, and he has such a big personality that anytime he's at one of our other events, because he also covers our track and field championship, our baseball championships, we make sure that his content also gets in front of our fans. So when basketball season comes around, they'll know who he is and they'll know to watch him. And I think that really works. It doesn't have to be just about the game of basketball or the competition that moment. It's just, who are these student athletes and why should you follow them? I mean, that's one thing I learned at the NBA when the NBA was on NBC and now ESPN and TNT still do it, is who are those players? What are they like? You know, the Steph and Steph, you know, with between the Blazers and the Warriors now. People are following that story because of those two guys and their family. Oh, yes, Golden State's going to be in the fifth final. But that really became a huge, you know, storyline. And it was something for people to watch who maybe they weren't the hardcore, you know, pro basketball fans.
It's funny you say that, because I think it also can be crowbarred in, those narratives. I think for the Super Bowl when it was Rams versus Patriots, they really tried to crowbar in the Lakers versus Celtics, the Dodgers versus the Red Sox. It just didn't feel right. And I think sometimes, I'm sure you've seen more than anybody, the campaigns that they're kind of reaching a little bit and they don't really resonate, especially for someone that lived in LA and as a Laker fan. I'm like, you're not being genuine to this fan base.
Well, I think, you know, again, going back to what does your brand stand for? I mean, one of the things that came out in our brand audit, obviously the Tournament at the Garden was number one. Our style of basketball.
Now, is that a focus group that you're doing from an audit standpoint? Or?
It was a good question. We did a couple of different things. We had focus groups in New York and we had focus groups in Chicago. We also talked to every president of our university, our athletic directors, other people who worked at each of the schools. We also talked to, you know, sports industry icons, you know, who've been in the sports world on the pro side for a very, very long time to get their, you know, their opinion. And we were lucky in that the same messaging kept coming up over and over again. So besides the tournament, besides, you know, Big East basketball, gritty, hardcore, do anything, you know, kind of a hard-nosed basketball story, but the rivalries and the nostalgia kept coming up over and over and over again. So I think if you have that, if that is one of your brand attributes, then you should promote it. But if you don't have it, to your point, you shouldn't promote it, because I think consumers are much more sophisticated today than they probably were years ago, because they have so many other pieces of content that they can evaluate and learn from.
I want to get into a little bit more about the Big East. Congrats once again, 4 sellouts in 5 sessions during the championship week, which was a first for the Big East Conference. And that just speaks, I think, your marketing campaign and your sales approach for tickets. So I guess, what have you learned so far? I mean, you've done it now for 5 years, and it looks like, which I'm with you. I think I'm amazed by how many people they're spending all this money and not analyzing it. It seems like you've really shifted strategy each and every year based on that. But I guess, what are some of the key learnings you've taken from running this campaign for the last half a decade?
So, well, thank you. We're really proud of, you know, the crowds that we've, you know, brought into the Garden, because I think a lot of people thought that we wouldn't survive, you know, almost 6 years ago. So that's probably been one of my proudest accomplishments in my career. People won't believe it, but I never sold tickets before. None of my jobs required me to sell out an arena. I didn't know how to build a box office. I didn't know how to do a public sale. And a lot of conferences don't have to do a public, you know, ticket sale. So I literally went through, I remember it was my second year. I literally went through all of the sessions, all the tickets that we sold. I found out all the tickets that we didn't sell, what price point that they were there any patterns, you know, that I was seeing. I literally analyzed everything. If we had comp tickets for some areas, is there any way that we could take those comp seats and turn them into revenue seats? So I really dug into all the details and really came up with a different way to price the tickets, different ways to sell the tickets. And I think that really, really made a difference. You know, I went to the Garden a lot to see where those particular sections that weren't selling were. I came up with a number of different offers of of the type of person that might come in and sit in that section. So I think I've always been a proponent, I guess, of knowing your numbers, both the financial side of your business, but also your results and what those results mean. And is there anything that you can learn from it? And I would say we probably wouldn't be successful if I didn't spend that much time on it.
Yeah, and it's never going to be absolute, but you'll be able to start making you'll see trends, you'll see those abilities to guesstimate about what's going to happen next type deal.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. I want to get into being the Big East Conference and having the teams in that conference, there's obviously a lot of data there as well. There's alumni, there's their newsletter, their social media following. Are you able to tap into all the teams' data for situations like that? Because I'm assuming, an alum of Villanova is much more likely to buy a ticket or make a purchase than just some random person on the street.
So the conference really exists almost, I call it like an agency for the schools. So we help them. They control, all of their data. But we share best practices a lot with the schools. We have some phenomenal ticket sales managers, for example, in our conference. And so I leaned on them a lot in my first year. So they control their data, but we work together, to make the tournament, which is what the conference, is responsible for, as well as all the championships. But, the alumni, that is their information. But to my point earlier, I came up with an alumni offer that I took to the schools to sit up in the upper, bleachers. Not this person who might be making a significant donation or something, but, the alumni that just came out of college and wants a seat at the tournament, but they can't afford one. So I've tried to come up with, offers like that. And some have been, some of the schools have really liked those things, but they really control their data.
The team and conference relationship obviously is throughout all of college athletics. Without naming names, is there anything you see that conferences aren't doing enough of or making mistakes with how they manage their brand or their teams?
Not really. I mean, I think all the conferences are unique. I mean, their broadcast partners are different. We're not with ESPN, we're with Fox. The Pac-12 is structured differently than, say, the Big Ten. So, I can't really speak to what, they do, because I think it's so based on your schools, again, what your priorities are. We don't have football in our conference. So we are.
Makes a difference.
Basketball is our number one priority, so we focus on that, where other conferences who have football, their priorities are very different, so they have to run things differently. So, I can't really speak to what other conferences do.
What's one thing you wish you could do more of at the Big East Conference?
I wish we could promote the Olympic sports and women's basketball more. I'm a runner, as you well know, and we have a number of our schools in our conference who have phenomenal running programs. And, I wish we could do, I wish we had more time and dollars to spend on promoting those sports, because I think those fall under the radar sometimes and they don't get the credit they're due. But, Villanova and Providence in particular have two phenomenal running coaches who are well known in the business, but Butler, Marquette, St. John's, a lot of our schools, Georgetown, have phenomenal running programs that people might not know about because they know the basketball program, the men's basketball program only.
I've worked with a lot of different people in the college space, including you. And I think one, hang up that you have is obviously the student athlete. Any brand, like the Lakers can go all in on LeBron, but if you're a Big East and you have Iverson or Patrick Ewing or Josh Hart, I know it's difficult to use those those student athletes as collateral. So I guess what are the restrictions there, and how have you found ways to still promote the games with maybe not using your star assets?
Well, I think the first thing is if you really like marketing, you really like business. For me personally, the challenge has always made it more interesting. So if I could do everything that I wanted to do, I don't think I would have liked this job as much as I have. So I think, going back to the basic principles I said before, I focused on what I could promote and what does differentiate us as a conference. Because again, my job is to promote the conference and the schools in the conference, but we don't promote the schools individually.
And if you went all in on the players and the players graduate, you kind of lose your key assets.
Exactly, exactly. So I focus on what we're known for, which is men's basketball, and what are we known for in men's basketball? And that's our style of play, our coaches. I mean, that's one thing that's very different in college. So we have, great stories about former coaches.
I mean, you got the best dresser in all of college sports.
Exactly. So, for example, I mean, one of the last projects I've been working on here is our 40th anniversary. So believe it or not, the conference became an official conference May 29th, 40 years ago. So that's another thing that we're focusing on. We're going to start promoting it next week in Providence. That's where the conference started with Dave Gavitt. And then through the whole 2019-20 season, we're going to be promoting the 40th anniversary across all of our sports. So, focus on what you can promote and do it really, really well. We've used the coaches a lot, especially recently in our television spots. And it's actually easy because they have such great, comments on the sidelines. Kevin Willard from Seton Hall, as a matter of fact, had a great locker room speech that I've used that as a voiceover for almost 2 years. I couldn't have written it any better. So I think it's, if everything was handed to you on a silver platter, maybe for some it would be interesting, not for me. And just focus on what you can and just do it really, really, really well.
I like it. All right. I'm going to get you out of here, but I have some rapid fire questions
for
you here towards the end. What is that one marketing tool that you could not live without?
I don't know if you call it a tool, but I think it's analysis. The data, having access to the data, knowing what the data means, and then doing something with it. Don't just have it sit someplace. And
not to get too granular, but how are you looking at that data? Is it just pulling Excel sheets from the back end of some of these platforms, or just rolling your sleeves up and looking at it that way? Is there different pieces of software that you can ingest it into?
Believe it or not, everything has been manual. So I look at every piece of data that I can, and if I don't know how to do it personally, I ask other people, outside, inside, if they can help me, get the data. But once I get it, I'm pretty good at analyzing it. And if I have trouble, then I go to somebody and, ask for their opinion. So
I envision a lot of pivot tables in Excel on your desktop somewhere.
Not that sophisticated.
Not even that sophisticated. Yeah.
No, gotcha. Not at all. Not at all.
From a business perspective, I guess we'll look at it from ticket sales or just movement you've seen for the brand. What social platforms seem to be working the best for you right now?
So a couple. So Twitter is phenomenal for us for news. So, during a game, during a tournament, Twitter is one of the best platforms for us. And actually, Twitter has gotten a little bit better on our streaming as well. Instagram, I think we've tripled our Instagram following in the past year for two reasons. One, we've hired an excellent graphic artist and who is just unbelievable at churning out content, but great content. Brad Zach, who's our head of social and digital content.
Shout out to Brad Zach.
Exactly. They just work really well, together. So our Instagram has been phenomenal, and our student athletes have actually done a great job, especially Marvin Clark and Justin Simon at St. John's. We work really closely with Fox Digital. So, that's to give you another answer to a question that you asked before. I mean, again, the conference doesn't have the audience that, say, an institution has, but guess what? Our broadcast partner, Fox, does. So if
when Fox pays for those rights, they want to make sure that it's successful. So they're going to put budget behind it. Yeah.
Exactly. So what we've learned is because they have the audience, if we help them, if we create the content, all they need to do is share it.
Yeah.
And now we've quadrupled probably even more, our audience than if we did it on our own. So that's really taking advantage, again, of the partnerships that you have, because we don't have the money. Even if we had the money, it would be not a very efficient use of our money, but having Fox as a partner was.
The fear of missing out, I know, in marketing and social, things are moving so quickly. How do you stay up on all the trends and make sure that you're, moving with the quick industry?
I read an incredible amount. I mean, I spend a lot of time on the LinkedIn platform. The articles on there are great. I subscribe to, all the sports newsletters I could ever subscribe to, all the sports and technology newsletters. Obviously, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, not really on Snapchat. I read the New York Times every single day. There's a lot of, college newsletters. I read Sports Business Journal every single day. But I would say the other way to keep in touch on what's going on is really talk to, your network and create a bigger network, because I had breakfast this morning with someone and, I had my list of questions ready for this person. And I probably learned more about what's really going on in the sports industry from him than from all the articles I just read. But you really do have to make it part of your day, part of one of the things that you do every day, because otherwise I think it's very hard to catch up. I mean, like sports gaming, esports, all that stuff. I mean, that didn't even exist before. A year ago, the whole betting side of things didn't even exist.
Yeah, gambling legalization too. That's right. Crazy. That's one thing that I preach a lot on this show. Like, unless you truly geek out over your role in this industry or are passionate about it, it's very difficult to read as much as you do or subscribe to all those newsletters. You have to really, again, read that stuff and be inspired in order to do it the right way, I think.
Well, when I talk to, younger folks who want to get into the industry, or when I've talked to, prospective employers, and they say, what attribute are you most proud of? And I would say to the question you just asked me is curiosity.
Yeah.
I don't want to miss out. I want to know what's going on. So I think if you don't have natural curiosity and have the work ethic or the drive to learn it mostly on your own, then you are going to fall far behind. And I think that's a mistake a lot of people
make.
And
I think that's interesting too, because like the willingness to say, you know what, maybe in 3 years I move all my out-of-home budget and I throw it all on Instagram. I don't know. Like, that may be what the data tells me. And just because one thing worked 4 years ago doesn't mean I have to keep on doing it. That's not, I guess, a philosophy a lot of people take. They keep on doing the same thing over and over again without that curiosity.
Or they say, which I get a lot, is, why would you even spend money on out of home when Instagram is so much less expensive? And I say a couple of things. Not all of our fans are on Instagram.
Yep.
Number two, you might see the ad on the 7th Avenue marquee or on the 8th Avenue on the side of MSG, and that will make you go on Instagram.
Yep.
So I really do think you have to have a pretty broad media mix nowadays in any company that you're trying to market.
All right. So any advice? I know there's probably people listening, marketing coordinators, consumer marketing team, and want to be at that CMO level one day. Any thoughts from you on how to help them kind of get to that level?
Sure. It's probably old school, as kids say today. Number one, have curiosity. Number two, show up and, make your presence known in a good way. In other words, show up, be respectful, ask a lot of questions, be willing to raise your hand for things that aren't necessarily within your purview of your current job. Volunteer for things, but don't always say, what am I going to get for volunteering?
Yeah.
I never would have had my job at the NBA if I didn't ask for additional jobs at DirecTV. And I did 3 different jobs at one point, paid the same amount of money. And I knew that was going to be what it was going to take me to get to the next level. But I wasn't always thinking about, where am I going to go next? I mean, I really, again, used my curiosity to drive me to the next place.
You saw a need or something that was interesting to you, and you fill that gap, and that allowed you to move much quicker than if someone would have just wait to hand it to you. I love it.
Exactly. I think, and lastly, is, relationships with people.
Yeah.
Your sponsors. I mean, you and I work together. Yeah. I don't look at you as a quote unquote vendor.
Right.
I look at all the people I work with as people. Mm-hmm. And 90% of them I get along with and I still keep in touch with them. But relationships are the key to almost every single thing that you do, whether it's personal or professional. And I think that you forget that sometimes when you're at your quote unquote job.
I love it. Well, that being said, if you could recommend anybody in your network that you think would provide some value or drop some knowledge on the fine listeners, anybody that comes to mind that you can intro me to?
Sure. Ann Rodriguez.
Okay.
And I can give you her contact information offline, but she and I recently met actually. And awesome. She's just been a great person for me to get to know, very knowledgeable about the sports business. It's a really good example of somebody that helps other people, is extremely knowledgeable.
And what's her role?
And it's not all about her ego. She recently just left a job and now is doing some consultancy.
Okay.
But I can share more with you offline.
Yeah.
But, she genuinely wants to help people, and it's not ego based. It's just being a really smart, good business person who wants to help others.
Love it. Well, Ann, thank you so much for the time. I really appreciate all the knowledge you dropped, and it's always awesome to sit down and talk shop with you. Appreciate it.
Well, I just wanted to say thank you to you and everybody on the STN crew. It's been a phenomenal 4+ years working together, and I just wish you and everybody all the best.
Thanks so much, Ann. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, David. Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye. Well, that was good stuff. Ann Crandall, CMO of Big East Conference. All right, a few takeaways, Will, I had on my side. I love the line about you don't expect the fans to come to you. You need to go to them. And to that point, if your fans are on Instagram, if they're walking down Fifth Avenue, if they're at MSG, if they're reading an article on Men's Health, whatever it may be, you need to go to your fans. And really, I think the punchline for everything she was saying is analyze the data. I don't think that is, appreciated enough in our industry. We talk a lot in social and in marketing. Even if you're a social media manager, what's your top 3 pieces of content? What buckets of content are working best right now on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter? Are you seeing some of the same similarities across all platforms, or does one platform have is video overperforming? Is meme content overperforming? Is UGC working better than Instagram and Twitter? You got to start to know all those things. And I think one thing from an STN standpoint, people start to call us almost data scientists, which is actually super interesting. That's couldn't be further from the truth in terms of what I wanted to create at a college and things like that. But it's turning out to be true. If you have a strategy, you have to be able to analyze it. And I think what Ann's done and I like the word about curiosity, right? Remain curious. Is this the right tactic? Should we keep on doing the same thing? Is at a home working? Is Instagram, we think it's going to be better for single ticket sales. Oh, wait a second. People are actually buying the entire tournament on Instagram. So next year, let's put some more money behind a overall tournament package rather than trying to slang single ticket sales. I thought that was really awesome. And you know what? One of the biggest things I took away from was, why are we changing our tagline every year? And I never really thought about that. But, like I mentioned, Nike has Just Do It, and then they have their separate campaigns, maybe in their different silos or different sports. But I do think, and Katie Daly from ESPN in a previous episode mentioned this as well, you think people are going to your profile and looking and saying, oh, you haven't posted in 8 hours. No, people are just following you in feed. And, if you work at the Big East Conference and you're in that office every single day and you're looking at, former posters or former campaign messaging, you may get sick of March to MSG, but it's resonated with the New York audience. It's resonated with Chicago and the conference as a whole. So why change something that seems to be working? And that becomes kind of that the ability to cultivate your audience and have them be invested in your brand and understand that you are the brand. So I really like that. Some really good pieces of wisdom that Ann dropped on the listeners and you as well. So we really appreciate it. Once again, episode 37, we ask every single show, if you don't mind hitting us with that review. If you like the content, why not hook it up with a 5-star, on iTunes. We appreciate that. I want to thank Will, Dylan, and Furker for all their help on the show per usual. Episode 37 of the Business of Social podcast. I'm talking really fast right now. Going to slow it down here towards the end. Powered by STN Digital. My name is David Brickley, the Business of Social podcast.